Welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Every season of our lives, it offers this unique set of lessons and opportunities, and each season can shape not only who you are, but the creative work you produce. Today's guest is the perfect example of how one can channel life's experiences into pages that not only tell a story, but also inspire, challenge, and transform others. She's an author who has navigated through the quiet introspection of her earlier years, but transformed her insights into a powerful voice in literature. Originally hailing from Birmingham, Alabama, and now residing in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Roll Tide, she is a proud mother, a loving wife, an amazing educator, and a graduate of the historical Stillman College. Her life's work is a testament to using one's talents to encourage and uplift others, urging them to move beyond adversity to uncover their best selves. Her debut book, Single with Standards, challenges the societal narratives around being single, promoting a period of self-discovery and personal growth as foundational to forming healthy, lasting relationships. In a culture that often glamorizes relationships without acknowledging the real work required to sustain them, her writing invites readers to value their single phase as a critical time for development and joy. I hope you're ready to dive into a conversation about how our personal growth influences our creative expressions and how embracing every season of life can lead to profound personal and artistic achievements. I know I'm excited to welcome Sharetta Watkins to this conversation. So without further delay, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you so much. I am so excited about being here with you today. I am just overjoyed. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, listen, for the listeners, I'm just going to tell them real quick. We met at an author event in Tuscaloosa just a few months ago. If you can believe it's actually been a couple months since we actually met in person. It feels like it was just yesterday. It hasn't been that long in my mind. And I was just taking a stroll through the floor, looking at the different booths, and I just had this sense of urgency. You were tucked away in a back corner, and I just had this sense of urgency saying, you need to stop and ask what this book is about. And what's funny is that your book isn't necessarily one that I need because, I've been married for just over 2 months past half of my life at this point, right? I married my childhood best friend 20 years ago. But I just genuinely needed to stop and hear about your book for whatever reason. And, you and I both know that was the Holy Spirit saying, hey, stop and have a conversation. And so I stopped and we talked, and I just adored everything about the encounter between you and your book and just how you are so passionate about what you wrote about. And so I just knew that I needed you to be here to talk about your book. But before we jump into talking about your book, tell us about you and what led you into writing a book, because that's not something people just do every day.
Yeah, well, gosh, I am, like you said, I'm married. So it's quite interesting that I wrote a book for single people. I am married. I have been in education for 21 years. I am currently an administrator at a school in Tuscaloosa City, which I have spent my whole career in Tuscaloosa City. I have 2 boys that I absolutely adore. I have a son who's in college and who's running track, and I have a 7. Well, he's now 8, an 8-year-old. So I have a 20-year-old and an 8-year-old. So my house is bananas, right? And throw my husband in the mix. It's just absolutely insane, right? But they are the loves of my life, and I adore them. And so this book, Single with Standards, was birthed out of a Facebook conversation during the pandemic. I think we all were just dealing with ourselves. The pandemic really forced us to just sit with ourselves and figure a lot of things out. For some of us, that was really good. And for some of us, that was quite a challenge. And it was a bit of both for me. And I just had this feeling, and I guess I know it was just a nudge of the Holy Spirit saying, listen, if you are dealing with these emotions as a married woman, what is going on with our single people who may not have that support, that emotional support, or who are definitely feeling lonely in this time and space where nobody can get out and really connect with other people. And so these little gems is what I call them, nuggets. I began to share on Facebook. And as I was sharing one night, somebody who was on there said, "This is a book. You need to take this stuff and you need to write this." And that is kind of where it began. And I just began to take my pen and settle myself and just jot down some of the same things that I shared on social media. And this book evolved.
Wild. I love how that happens when that inspiration just strikes and you know it's not from you. Like it flows so much easier. Like there's no question about it. And I will say that with this book, like I was showing her earlier, like I have marked it up. I have read it more than once, and I'm not single, but I have been a marriage and family counselor, and I have talked to so many girls in my church experiences that single young women who they're struggling with their singleness in life. Like, yes, we are made for connection. We're made for relationships. I get that. But to tell you, I wish I'd had something like this book alone to hand to them, because you are so real in the message that you put in it. You can feel the care and the compassion that you have for those who are struggling with their singleness. And it's so obvious. And you even tackle like the topic of the celibacy for those who want to prioritize that in their relationships. You tackle that with such grace, which I come from a background of it was not graceful. It was like like shove it in your throat and this is what you have to do. And you're like, no, listen, there's such thing as second chance. And then we can get to that. But like, what were the challenges? Were there challenges that you faced when you were trying to decide what to include in the book and what to leave out? Did you leave stuff out that you were like, no, I can't talk about that? Or are you thinking about a second one with stuff you did leave out? What's all that?
Well, gosh, it's so hard when you sit down to write. And I know you know that because you have authored several books yourself. And you just question, am I putting information in that people really want to hear? And is it going to, is what I'm trying to communicate really translating and coming off the pages? So I had those thoughts, going back and forth. And am I putting too much? Is this not enough? Am I clear in is it clear as mud or not at all? You had those different things. So it was a challenge of just trying to decide what to include. So, and what helped me was I just started writing. I just got to the point where I just wrote whatever came up. There were some experiences that I did not put in there because I just didn't know how much people could handle.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to be so transparent. I don't even know if that makes sense, but
it does.
Where people start to saying, okay, well, I don't know. But some people can handle that. Some people cannot. So I just began to write, I just let it flow. And sometimes I would write for hours and then I would go back and decide what I needed to take out. I also had a good friend of mine who helped me to edit. And so she would read through and say, well, this is not as clear. What are you trying to say right here? And so that also helped me to think things through as well.
Nice. And I love that you combined, it's like there's personal storytelling, but then there's practical advice. And so, if you want to sit down and it even has some space, it's like a workbook, right? Let's go at your blanks to journal or to notebook, what's going on in that kind of thing. And so I think people can relate to that better. And it's hard to do that well, but you did that so well. And my next question was going to be, did you struggle with transparency or did it just feel natural? So yeah, like that was the conversation I was about to move into because sometimes when you sit down to be like, okay, this is my story. How many people are going to read this? Like, was there that hesitation there that made you go, oh, Mom might read this?
Well, I don't know. To some degree, there were certain things that I didn't want to include to, make someone say, oh, well, what is she talking about me?
Yeah.
Was I the perpetrator? Did I do that or whatnot? And I do believe that it is important to be transparent because that's how we help people. I think we help people, we support people when we are willing to share our testimony and say, hey, I know how you feel. I have felt this way also. And this is what, helped me. And sometimes people just need you to listen.
Yes.
So that's why I thought it was so important to include this little space for people to reflect. I am big on reflecting, and I think that's kind of what helps me to be calm because I am quick to reflect and not quick to respond.
Nice. I'm the
So yeah.
opposite. Just gonna be honest on that one. I'm not a bad counselor. I'm a very direct counselor, and I'm one of those. Stop it! Like, I hear what you're saying now. Stop it! Like, I'm not. So let's talk about what's in the book. Okay, so you do challenge like these common societal perceptions about being single. Why do you think there's such a stigma around being single?
I think we just live in a society where there is so much pressure, and it kind of has always been that way, but it seems to be more now. And I think that's because of social media and everything is just so right in your face. And there's just this thing. If you're not with someone, then what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Or what are you not doing? Or maybe you should do this. Everyone has an opinion of why you are single and what you should and should not do. But I just think that it is so important that we really own our singleness and not rush. If you believe in marriage, then marriage is forever, right? So why not take that time to really get to know yourself? I think that also is kind of why relationships don't last because we don't really know who we are or what we want or why we want the things that we want.
Oh, you are so right. I will just, transparency. So I met my husband Rob when we were 13. We were babies, right? And he was love at first sight. I was friend zone. You're like a brother to me, right? Like it was arm's length and we can be best friends. And that's where we draw the line. And it was that way until I was 19 and he gave me an ultimatum and he said, if you move to Tuscaloosa, because that's where he was at school, he was in Alabama, and he was like, if you move to Tuscaloosa, which I had planned to do because my sister was moving there, then we are getting married. Like that was it. He said, if you move to Tuscaloosa, we're getting married. If you don't move to Tuscaloosa, we can't be friends anymore. And I was like, whoa. And it was because, having a friendship with me was going to interfere with any of his future relationships, right? He knew that he wanted to be married. He knew that he wanted to be married to me, but I was like, I don't know, you're my best friend. That would be weird to cross that line and change things. Obviously, I moved to Tuscaloosa. And it worked out. But on that same line, I was 20 when we got married. And I didn't know. I went from my parents' house to the dorm room, back to my parents' house, to my husband's house. I didn't know who the heck I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was still in college and it took me a long time to get through it. But yeah, like I had no idea. I just knew that I wanted to be with him in a relationship and married. I think I rushed through things because I thought that's what was expected. And so I love that you are like, sit with yourself
Yeah.
because you don't know you. And if you
Yeah.
don't know you, how are they going to know you?
Right. That is so important. And even though I got married later, I think I was 30 something,
Mm-hmm.
31, somewhere between 31 and 33 when I got married. So I was older, but still
Yeah.
there were things that I had not mastered. And that was too another reason why this book was born, because there were things that I was dealing with as a married woman that I felt I should have mastered before. It would have made things easier. But I'm so grateful that God gives us grace to do both and so I felt like he had given me grace to get through some things. And this book was a form of healing for me as well. But it takes so long to discover who you are. And then we are ever evolving. So we also have to give ourselves grace to continue to grow. But that's why I think it's so important that we really take time to learn who we are. Because even though I got married later in life, I was busy trying to find out, why are these relationships not successful? Well, what is wrong with me, instead of looking inward to see, well, this is who you are and this is what's good about you. And maybe that's what they cannot see.
Yes. And I think it's so important too to find somebody, or to seek out somebody who is willing to also do the work on themselves, and not think that, okay, I've done the work on me, now I can change them. I know that that is a dangerous, slippery slope, but I see it all the time. I saw it all the time. It was, I'm here at the counselor and getting help. And then I'll take it back home and tell them. And I'm like, not going to work for you. It's not like, that's not how that happens. Because if they're not willing to do the work, then they're not willing to do the work together, And so that's rough. So yeah. I feel like this was probably a giant therapy session when you wrote this book. For you, like, it was process. I find that to be true even when I'm writing fiction. Like, it's an emotional, like, just dumping of everything I'm feeling into my characters or whatever. Did you leave the pages feeling more exhausted than when you went into it sometimes?
I left the pages feeling not exhausted, but a little relieved. I felt like, and during this process, I realized that some of the things that I went through as a young kid, and, even in how I would respond in certain instances in relationships, I realized that, things when I didn't like certain things and I wouldn't speak up about it, that situations that happened when I was a kid took my voice in those instances. And so I couldn't speak up because it was connected to something that happened to me when I was younger. And so now I felt like I was finding my voice. And not only am I finding it, but I'm also sharing it, hoping to give other people permission to really discover who they are and to find your voice and be okay with saying, you know what? I don't have to have this relationship to feel significant, because I have taken time and I know within myself that I am significant. And you are blessed, to have me as an addition.
I got chills when you said that. And it's so funny because I said the exact same thing probably last week. I was talking to I do another podcast with two other authors once a week. And I said, we were having a conversation about, writing and processing emotions through writing. And I said, I feel like in the last 3 years, when I started writing the book till now, I have found my voice. Mm-hmm. Right. Like I have, and I write fiction, right? I don't write nonfiction. I don't write self-help. I don't write, these really great books like this, but I found my voice in that I felt this freedom to express what was inside. And it takes me back to one of my favorite acronyms is, we say we're fine. Everything is fine. I'm fine. And that acronym, feelings inside not expressed. Like, wow. Right? Like, put it right on your bulletin board, and there it is. Because you're not fine because you're holding it in. And once you find that voice, like, sometimes it's hard to shut it up.
Yes. And but it's so liberating. Yes. It is so liberating, and it's necessary.
It is. It is necessary, and I think that when we start seeking out this validation in relationships, when we start, trying to say, oh, I need somebody to tell me who I am, we're giving our voice away. It's no longer ours. We've said, hey, what you're saying to me, what you're pouring into me, that's what is true. And that's like, oh, but they don't know you like you know you.
Right.
Oh, can I read something from your book?
Yes, yes. Okay. Sure.
This is like I said, marked it up, and then I have my favorite. I was like, thank you very much. And it comes from your standard number 2. And the golden rule, treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. And underlined, highlighted, orange highlighter, pointed to, bracketed, all these things. The first part was, I have found that the way we allow others to treat us can often be a direct indicator of how we view ourselves. And I was like, shut up. Stop talking to me. And then you went on to insult me by saying, expecting others to give you what you're not willing to give yourself is too tall an order for anyone to fill. And I was like, let me read that again.
Mm-hmm.
Expecting others to give you what you're not willing to give yourself is too tall an order for anyone to fill. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but seriously, it's stuff like that all through this book. And it was really hard to limit my highlights. I was like, if I highlight it all, then I'm not really doing myself any favors. But and it's such a short, simple, easy read that will, like I said, you'll want to read it again, and you sit there and reflect. And I think this is something somebody could pick up their first year of singleness and read through it and reflect. Their second year of singleness, read through it and reflect, and it's going to look totally different.
Yeah.
Once they start applying the rules and strategies that you have in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what? That piece sent me into a place like almost like a whirlwind of reflection, because I found myself giving and making adjustments for other people. But when I needed them to do that for me, it wasn't done the way I thought it should have been. And so God was like, and I was kind of angry with God, like, well, I've been this kind of person. You've given me these character traits to as a giving person, and you know that, but why is it that people don't recognize when I need them to make adjustments for me? And he said, well, I never told you to make adjustments for other people. And then he said, well, let's get to the root of why you do that. And it just went down really to my need for validation. And that was me overextending myself, was my way of, I guess, hoping that they would recognize, if I'm doing this for you, I need you to do this for me in return. But I'm doing this because I need you to validate me in an area. And it was way too much. And I could not get upset because other people weren't willing to do the same, because I also did not have to do that. It was my choice.
I tell you what, we like to think that people can read our minds, right? We want people to read. We're like, I pick up on your needs. Why aren't you, especially when it's your spouse or your boyfriend, significant other, Here's the most common piece of advice that I always say to anybody who's in these relationships, because I see it from a mile away, because I was that person too. I was that person who would be like, I'm doing this for you so that you will think, hey, maybe I should do this for her. But that's not what would happen.
Yeah.
But unvoiced expectations they are preordained resentments. Like you are just immediately setting yourself up for resentment when you're not voicing those expectations. And so and that comes with that. You will find that you can speak those expectations so much louder when you find your voice, which means pushing out the ones that are coming in from outside of you and really sitting down and focusing on, what are my expectations?
Yeah.
Why is everybody else getting to tell me what I want or what I should do? Like,
yes, that was a tough lesson for me to learn, but it was a much needed lesson.
And you're right. There's some liberation that comes with that. There's a lot of freedom to be found. Let's see. There was another one. I should have started. See. Ooh, this was a good one. They're all good ones. When you truly love yourself, you won't conform to the opinions of others. Aww.
Listen. Oh my gosh.
Right?
Right. Get rid of the life of the chameleon. That's what the constant changing for other people. That was me, just willing to adapt, willing to change, so flexible for everyone else. But, expecting that in return, I was upset when I didn't get that. But it was only coming from a place of my need. I needed people to see me for a long time. And I didn't not include this in the book, but it may be something coming. But for a long time when I was younger, I felt invisible. Like nobody saw me. Nobody saw my needs, my emotions, and I was always quiet. I'm relatively quiet, just very observant, always watching, but I didn't talk a lot. And that's probably hard to believe now.
You talking to be a teacher, so yeah.
Yes. But, that was, so I had no problem adjusting, to other people. But now I am free from just conforming to what people want. And I don't really care if you like what I do or not. If I feel good about it and I know it's right, then that's for you to deal with.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I will say, I feel like 40 was kind of this fabulous revolution that I
Oh,
kind of made myself into. Like, I felt it coming around 37, and I was like, something's changing, something is shifting. And it wasn't the change. I'm not there yet. But, like, like I felt that there was a season that I felt was shifting, and I hit 40, and I was just like, I've never loved my life so much. I've never felt so free to say no,
oh,
and which is a full sentence, right? Like I don't give
yes.
excuses, I don't give reasons. I'm like, I don't
No.
want to do that.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah.
I don't owe anybody anything. But why do we do that? Why and we think that we owe, and I'm like, you can't give from something you don't have. And
Yes.
yeah, it's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's so important that for us not to expect other people to give us something that we don't give ourselves. Why? We have to give ourselves grace in order to know how to give that to other people. We got to love all of who we are, flaws and all, in order to love someone else. It's so interesting how, in relationships, I was able to overlook those little things that drove me crazy just because I was willing to tolerate that person because maybe they said something that I liked or they did something that made me feel good. But I would not do that for myself. I was horrible at the way I spoke to myself. But I would forgive someone else for speaking, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And but when you took that time to sit down and say, wait a second, I
Yeah.
am worth so much more. My value is so much higher than what I have put on myself. Like, how
Mhm.
different did life get at that point?
Oh my gosh. It was like a whole awakening. It was like, what have you been doing all this time? And we waste so much time looking for validation from the outside when it has to start within.
It
Because
has to.
people are fickle. People change and they'll tell you one thing one day and then the next day it's something else and have you making all these changes. But when you are solid in who you are, people can come and go and you will not waver.
Yes. And when the right person comes along, they're going to grow with you. They're going to change with you.
Mhm.
That is something that I literally had this conversation with Rob probably 2 weeks ago. We were discussing a very large decision had fallen into our laps. It was like, hey, are we willing? It wasn't even a yes or no. It was a are you willing situation. And we kind of looked at each other and we were like, yeah, we're definitely willing. But if you had asked us, 10 years ago, we'd been like, we're doing it this way right now. We're very impulsive, very, whatever. And I said, I'm so glad that we took a minute to go, before we said, yes, we're willing, because it shows that we've grown up together.
Yeah.
Like we grew through these experiences we've had. We're on the same page because,
Mhm.
you know, you have to be willing to grow and make these decisions and changes together. When you
Yes.
don't, yeah, there's that
Mhm.
friction.
Yep.
We all have that friction. We've all been there.
Hmm. Yes, I like to call them that intense fellowship.
Like that. Excuse me, sweetheart. You go to your room. Daddy and I have to have some intense fellowship.
Hmm. Hmm.
And no, that's not a euphemism.
Right.
So let's shift gears real quick and talk about becoming a published author. So, what is that process like for you? Is that something that you were like, "Oh, this is hard"? How did you publish your book?
Okay, so that was a challenge. After I finished writing and kind of had all the details or whatnot in place, then here's this other hurdle I have to jump over: how to publish it. I really didn't have, funds tucked away to go through a publishing company. So I found out about how you can publish a book on Amazon. A friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine who had published a book the same way, was telling me, well, you could do it yourself. It's fairly easy. The steps are there and it kind of tells you what to do. And so that was the route that I took. I did get my work copywritten. So that was probably might have been the easiest thing. Just a matter of uploading that manuscript and waiting for them to, respond with the okay. But uploading it probably to Amazon, but formatting it was driving me nuts.
Yeah, with especially I can imagine with like the lines and the worksheet type areas, like I bet
Yes,
that was a pain.
it was a pain. And I got to the very end, got it formatted. I had to change my original cover of the book because it would not fit the format that was, aligned to the manuscript. And so I had it set to the book to be released on my father's birthday. That was just significant to me. It was just a date that I wanted. And you know how we are when we have something in mind, we want it, well, at least me, it has to go that way, or, it's a bummer, right? And so I was so upset because it did not come out on his birthday because it just took a little longer than I anticipated for everything to be approved. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like maybe a week or two later, but it was still in September, which is around my father's birthday month. And so I really had to kind of shake myself because I was allowing myself to get so frustrated. And God was like, hey, girl, the work is already done. It's okay. You finished it. Don't let this little setback distract you from the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you have completed your first book.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's like a 3% of people who set out to write a book ever get to the point where they can publish it. And then they stop. They don't do another one. So you said first book. Does that mean there's a second book?
There are 3 books that I know I need to write. This was the first one. There's a book on prayer. I am the pastor of prayer and intercession at my church. So there's a book that I know I need to write on prayer. And then there is one that I want to write in the education world. So.
Oh, I bet those will both be very powerful books. I think that one, you're a fantastic communicator, like through your book, but also, I saw you present your book at the author event that we were at, and I was like, yeah, people listen to her.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
I was so nervous up there reading
Oh
them.
my gosh. Why do we like they have that I can't even remember the blessed lady's name, but she was like, okay, I've got you down for 4:30. And I'm like, no, you don't. She's like, yeah, your husband said you'll be up there. And I was like, why? And she was like, to read. And I was like, no. Out there. And I was like, what's about like, I don't know what I was doing.
I know,
I didn't
right?
do that. It's crazy. I can talk like this. Put me on a stage in front of 100 people, I'd be fine. Ask me to read my book in front of somebody and see what happens.
Why? It's so weird that we're like that. The teachers are the same way. We are fine talking in front of children, but put us in front of adults. Well, I'm not that bad because I kind of talk in front of adults a lot.
Yeah.
But some teachers, you put them up to lead a PD session, and they are like a deer in headlights.
Imagine that's probably different with educate. Like, I don't know. I'm friends with a lot of teachers, and they can be a little judgmental. No offense.
Yeah.
I was a teacher. I get it. Like, I taught psychology for a little while. Um, yeah, they scare me. Like, because they will sit there and tear your work apart because they're used to grading stuff. I guess they're just like, all right, well, 10 points off. You stuttered over that word. Red mark. I don't know. Teachers are intimidating. It's good though.
I love teachers.
I do too. I respect teachers. I did it for 2 years, and I did not like the parents. No offense, parents, if you're listening. You can't pay it, but that was my problem.
It's definitely tough work.
I can't imagine. You can't pay me enough. I mean, they don't pay all enough.
They don't pay us enough, so that's another podcast.
That's a totally different connected conversation we could have. So let's talk about your book again. All right, so you've got 2 more books down the pipeline that you know that you want, or 3 more books, 4 more books, 5 more books. We'll see. So I will tell you that I self-published my books. I love self-publishing. Like I did not go through a publisher. I don't pay anybody to publish my books. I do all the work because I love it. And the control that I have over the cover design, the control that I have over when it's published, over who gets to edit it, what goes in it, which, that's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you think you would stay a route with self-publishing, or do you want to go bigger and maybe try traditional?
No, I really like self-publishing because I agree with you. Owning and having control over what goes in there. And now that I've have got this first one under my belt, I kind of know how to time it a little bit better, knowing, okay, if I want it to come out here, I need to have this done here. So I didn't quite anticipate that as I should have. But, first time, it was a complete learning experience, right? And so hopefully I can remember the steps when I get ready to get there again. But I do,
You'll
I
call me.
really, but yes, I do think that I will go that route because it is easier, financially. And it really just made it real to me being able to be involved in every step. Like even the first couple of copies, how they send you just a preview copy. I have those just going back and like, I have one book that and this is not the one, but I have one book that I have that I just wrote a letter to myself inside and basically saying, girl, you did it. You did it. You published your first book. And I was in high school. I had an English teacher that told me that I was a horrible writer.
Mm-mm.
She did. And I think I was in maybe 9th or 10th grade. And she was like, you won't ever be a writer because this is horrible.
Uh-uh.
And so I thought about her a lot as I penned this book. And I just, and for a long time, I always enjoyed writing. I would write, just a way to reflect, always kind of kept a journal. But as I penned this book and people read it, and every time somebody tells me how much they enjoy this book, I think about how wrong she was. And I'm so glad that I did not allow her to totally take that power from me and make me feel like I could not do something that was really in me to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And that is such a huge, like, chunk of wisdom that somebody could walk away with right now and just be like, I got it. I got a teacher's name in mind, and that's the one I'm going to prove wrong, whatever the case may be, or an adult or, a coach, whoever it is. Like, and we've all had those voices in our heads, and they
Absolutely.
those voices stick the loudest. They do, unfortunately.
They do.
So, yeah.
They do. That's why we have to guard our hearts and make sure that we are giving the right people. That's one of the things that I talk about too, giving the right people access to your heart. What happens, when we allow people to mishandle us? And sometimes we mishandle who we are because we haven't taken that time to just sit with who we are. So, yeah.
Listen, we could like go to church. We could just do the whole book and just like
I'm telling you,
just preach it. I love it. But I don't want to take your time. I know you've got family and stuff, that you've got to take care of. But we are to the point of the show where if you have time and you want to, we can flip the script and you can become the host of this show.
So, we exchanged books. So I had a chance to just kind of look through here and I was like, oh. First of all, I love the cover. I'm visual and auditory. So I was like, oh,
Okay, let me tell you a story about that cover. It was
Yes.
not the original cover. I designed my original covers because I was like, I can't afford to have somebody do me a cover. And so I was like, I know how to use Canva. And so I made a cover and I was so proud of that cover. Like I was so proud of it. And probably one of the first real reviews that was not from family, she was like, the cover left a little something to be desired, but I love the book. And I was like, ah, shoot, like it should like the cover. And so on the book's first birthday, on the book's first birthday, I was like, I'd had a guest who she was a book cover designer, and I emailed her and said, I need book covers. I need it. So that was the birthday gift to my book. They got new book covers. I want them too now.
That is, listen, I struggled with what I wanted my cover to look like. This was not the one that I had in mind, but it was just closest to what I had to go to with as far as what was available. But you learn.
Absolutely. And it's eye catching. At least you see it. And I knew exactly where my book was at all times. I could see it. And I was like, and I love the beach. So
So tell me, I do have a question for you. So tell me, how did you get into fiction writing?
I've always loved writing like you. I was always just writing something. Sometimes it was really bad poetry. In my case, I was not really good. Roses are red, and it was rough. And actually, several years ago, I mean, we were in the process of moving here, so that would have been 6 years ago, I guess. I went through the attic and I found this 3-ring binder that I had poetry in there from like middle school. And I was like, I will keep it, but nobody will ever see this. I don't even know that Rob has ever seen it. So I've always loved to write, good or bad, didn't matter. And I always knew that it was something that I was good at because I won contests for writing and speaking, right? Like I could do that. Oratorical contests were like my jam. I loved it. I can give speeches all day long. It's great. But I didn't know that I was allowed to write fiction. Does that make sense? Like I knew, I loved reading. I always loved it, but I didn't know it was something that I was allowed to do until 3 years ago when I was like, oh, I've got a dream that I need to figure out how it finished. Like, how is that going to end? And that's where No Matter What came from. And so I just started writing it. And I got about what would be now 4 chapters in. And I was like, I think I'm going to write a book. So I wrote a book. And then I wrote another one. And then I wrote another one.
Wow. So I heard you say you had a dream and you need to finish. So is that where your inspiration comes from?
It did on the first one, on No Matter What, it did. Like I woke up and I thought, that was really interesting. I wonder what was going to happen next. And so I started kind of just writing it out because it was intriguing. I was like, this girl has these gifts and abilities. I was like, what does she do with these? She solves crimes or something. And so then I wrote the book. But the second one, The Lost and Found, which comes right after No Matter What, I just needed to know how my characters were doing. Like I needed to check back in with those characters from the first book. And then the Fall When You're Ready, this one that just came out in February, it was a country song. I heard a song and I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book. And now there's like a 4-book series in the process.
Wow. It's amazing. That's amazing how different things can inspire us to write.
And that's why I think you have to be present all the time because you just never know. Like just always be present wherever you are.
Absolutely. That's, you see butterflies throughout my book because I always notice them.
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed that I don't know what species they are, but they're yellow butterflies. And I see them a lot around October, which is my husband's and I anniversary. And matter of fact, in my wedding bouquet, there were red roses and yellow butterflies. And there you see the butterfly behind me. I just feel like, I have such a connection with the butterfly. It starts off as this little creature that no one really notices until it goes through this process and it becomes something beautiful that people see all the time, and so that's kind of how I felt, as a kid. Nobody really noticed me, and now here I am emerging into something beautiful that not only other people recognize, but I recognize.
Okay, let's take that one step further because, when they get in their little chrysalis or whatever, they literally break down to nothing, right? They are literally nothing. And then all of a sudden they come out and it's like, look at me, like they have to do the work. And it's like,
paying attention and being in the moment is critical.
It is and I think that's true whether you're an artist or whether you're a human. Right.
Yeah.
Like staying in the moment and knowing yourself well enough to know that, maybe I'm not in the moment right now. I need to do whatever it takes to get back into the moment. Cause yeah,
Yeah.
we're so distractible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking to me.
And we are. We all are.
It's so true. Um, Anything else you want to talk about?
I think
I mean, we ran the gamut.
we did. I must say this. I have so enjoyed um, being able to talk to you, and I'm so appreciative for this opportunity. I really am.
Oh, me too. And tell us how we can connect with you. Where are you on Facebook, your website, anything like that you've got going on?
So, website is in the making. That is something that is on my to-do list. But you can find this book on Amazon. You can follow me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Sharetta Watkins. I'm on Instagram as Black Butterfly.
Oh,
I am also on, what's the other one? I'm on Twitter, Sharetta Watkins on Twitter. And, well, it's not even Twitter anymore. It's
X, I
something
think.
else,
Yeah.
X. And oh my gosh. Well, I guess we're going to lose the other social media, TikTok, pretty soon. So,
You're on there for now, though.
yeah, I'm on there for now too, as Sharetta. So,
Okay. And all of that'll be in the show notes. So all they have to do is go click a button. And then, in order for this conversation to end, you have to answer the big question. Are you
okay.
ready for that?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you would want somebody to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
If you hear nothing else, don't be afraid to sit with yourself. You are the most valuable person. You have the most valuable insight into who you are. No one should know you better than you. So take time to sit with you, with who you are. Time discovering who you are is time worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely. And there's nothing to add to that. Like that is what it is. Like nobody can know you better than you because nobody else hears your inner thoughts. Nobody else has your feelings. Like get to know you. You're actually a pretty cool person. I mean, honestly. Sharetta, thank you so much. Like always, this is a pleasure, and I want to do this again. And it doesn't have to be a podcast. We can just hang out because I think you're fantastic and wonderful.
I'd love that. I'd love that.
Oh, good. Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for having me so much. I appreciate it.